Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Women in Tech virtual roundtable discussion. Really thrilled that you're all joining us today. I'm really excited to share some really informative, inspiring stories and conversations with some really incredible leaders this morning. My name is Marty Mordarsky. I am the campus director for Tech Elevator in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm joined by my colleague, Sandy Young, our marketing director at Tech Elevator. We're going to be the host for today's discussion. We're really excited to be part of the Greater Cleveland Partnerships Tech Week. I think this is the third or fourth year in a row that we've had the opportunity to host and facilitate a conversation around women in tech. And we're also very thrilled and appreciative of the support from the Cleveland Water Alliance, Greater Cleveland Water Alliance, for sponsoring this event. Just going to do some quick housekeeping items here before we get started. First of all, this is a Zoom webinar format, so you may have noticed your video isn't showing up on the screen right away. You're automatically muted. That is intentional. There's nothing wrong with your machines if you're not used to this format. And the way this will work is as our panelists are speaking and we transition to our Q&A portion of their sessions, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions a number of different ways. One will be to use the chat function, which if you've used Zoom in the especially last year and a half, you're probably very familiar with. There's also a Q&A button that you can use to pose questions that we'll also address throughout those sessions. And then if you are hoping to answer or ask a question or interact live, we have the ability to unmute you and show your video. So if you'd like to be called on, you can simply raise your hand in the participants tab. And then again, Sandy and I will do our best to facilitate that and get those questions as they come in. So our agenda for this morning is up on the screen now. So like I said, we've got a really wonderful group of panelists that you're going to hear from today. Kicking off will be Kim Snipes from KeyBank, followed by Ivy Chin from Sherwin-Williams, Michelle Tomelo, and then Angie Klein will close it out. The way each of these sessions will work is pretty simple. So Kim's going to kick us off here in a few minutes, and she will do kind of a quick introduction and tell you a story from her career and lessons learned, something that's informative, something that is again inspiring, to give you a sense of who she is and her career journey. And that part of the session will be around maybe 5 minutes, could be more, and then we'll transition to the Q&A period. So for the remainder of Kim's session up until 8:20, we'll be fielding questions from all of you and interacting throughout the morning. Then we'll transition to the next speaker and follow the same format, and we'll do the same thing, I should say, throughout the duration of the morning until 9:50. So that is the plan for this morning. For those of you who've attended sessions like this before, we call this a virtual roundtable. And the idea here is not just to hear these inspiring stories and hear from these great female leaders, but also to have the chance to ask them questions that are going to help you in your career journey, whether you are exploring a new career in technology, whether you are looking to advance in your career, or whether you are an ally of someone else, another woman in technology who's looking to enter the field, and you want to learn how you can better support that journey. We're here this morning for a lot of reasons. And, I mentioned at the outset, Sandy and I are with an organization called Tech Elevator. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, first and foremost, we're a mission-driven organization. And our aim is to elevate the people, companies, and communities we serve through what's called a coding boot camp. So we deliver short form, intensive, in-person, live training in a 14-week full-time software development training program. We've been around for going on 6 years. We have over 2,200 graduates of our program, not just in Cleveland, but around the country as our operations have expanded. And early on in our program and really throughout, we've kind of looked at the demographics of our classrooms. We've looked at the companies that we've worked with and that are hiring our students for entry-level software developer roles. And, we sit there and we go, why aren't there more women in our classroom? Why aren't there more females in technology? And what can we do about that? And that's really important to us. So again, really appreciate the opportunity to partner with the Greater Cleveland Partnership during Tech Week on events like this. And we've taken to supporting and hosting many events over the years focused on helping underrepresented groups get more exposure, get more opportunities to learn about this field and this industry, and trying to support and facilitate more conversations to help answer that question. Why aren't there more women in tech? And so today's program is an extension of that. And we're really thrilled to be here this morning. All right, so those are all really the housekeeping items. Again, if you have questions throughout, please feel free to use the chat function, use the Q&A function. At this time, I am going to, and Kim, just to give you a heads up, your video should be going on soon here. We're going to ask you to start that video. So I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker this morning. Kim Snipes is the Chief Information Officer of Consumer Digital Investment Technology and Services for KeyBank. She leads the technology portfolio that supports the consumer bank, including all products and physical channels for the retail, wealth, and small business segments of the consumer bank. In addition, Kim runs the investment and wealth operation groups, and as CIO, she performs strategic and operational planning, ensures application development is effectively delivered and managed in best-in-class cost efficiency and system availability standards. In addition, she drives innovation and adoption of industry best practices by providing state-of-the-art solutions to enable the KeyBank customer experiences. Kim is a passionate advocate of women in technology and overall diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. She's currently serving on the Key Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and has served in leadership roles on several internal advocacy groups, as well as serving in the past as on the executive board of Women Who Code, an international non-profit organization focused on advancing women in technology through network support and learning opportunities. So ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of introducing our first panelist for the morning, Kim Snipes.
Thank you, Marty. And can you hear me okay? Just doing a little quick sound check.
Terrific. You're loud and clear.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm energized to be able to start the morning like this and be with all of you. So as Marty said, gosh, you could probably go on LinkedIn and see all the different places where I've been. I think what would be more interesting is what I've learned through my 20-some years experience. And so I was thinking back on a couple key themes or insights I gained over time in my career that I just wanted to start out by sharing, and then look forward to, more importantly, your questions. So a couple things. First, I would say is raise your hand because no one else is going to raise it for you. That's one theme. I've found in my career, I've always been very candid with my leadership as to what my aspirations are. I will tell you, I'm living my dream job. I've had a goal to be a CIO and really see how I can enable the business and inspire my teams. But I didn't get there by being quiet. I got there by continuing to say, hey, I have aspirations and I would love the support to get to where I'm trying to get to. Now, at the same time, so I was willing to take on special assignments. And then I believe strongly you need to show, not just tell. So I need to demonstrate my ability to take on more and to do the things that I hope to aspire to. I will, in those type of opportunities, I'll give you one example. I took on a responsibility when I was at Bank of America to take on we had a program that was looking for just new and different ways to do what we did in technology. And it was a special assignment. I raised my hand for it and I got to know a gentleman in another part of the tech organization. Fast forward many, many years, that relationship and connection brought me to Capital One into a technology leadership executive role at Capital One, which was a big springing off point for how I ended up where I am. But if I hadn't raised my hand, if I hadn't taken that on, that opportunity might not have been there. My other theme is saying yes when others say no. And that could be either being willing to take on some risk and take some opportunity and take on an opportunity that maybe others are a little hesitant to do, or, and I was thinking also maybe opportunities that you yourself were like, wow, that path doesn't make sense for me. And give you an example there. I've been in my early career started in application development, not on the what I'll call the infrastructure side, the servers, the hardware, but I had an opportunity at Bank of America to move into an infrastructure leadership role over the DMZ for the consumer bank. So all of the customer facing applications in that part of the infrastructure. So dealing with the load balancers, the firewalls, the web servers. I would not have, if someone had asked me, hey, are you going to want to go in that area? I would have said, yeah, no, I really like application development, but the opportunity presented itself. And I said, yes, not no. And again, what I felt like it did for me looking back is really help round out my understanding of what it really takes for solutions to work, right? Applications without the infrastructure don't work. So that was a great learning experience. Trust and have confidence in yourself. You're going to have along the way reasons why to maybe doubt yourself. I think there's a well-known studies that say women, we feel like if we don't have 100% of the skills needed for a role, maybe we don't go for that role. Men, if they're like 60% of that role, they'll go for it. So really be willing to put yourself out there. Now, I think what has served me well is know what you don't know, rely on your team for those gaps and be honest about them. And I'll use that example of when I went into Bank of America into that infrastructure leadership role. My team was so much more skilled and experienced in this space. And I told them, I'm not you. I can't do your job. But what I can do is understand the importance and the prioritization, what's critical and needed. And I can help you get over the challenges. I can help you break through barriers. And I will learn, right? I will learn from you. And I think having that has been the way I've gone into each of my roles. And I feel like you earn the trust and credibility with the team. You rely more on the team, so you're not trying to kind of do their job, which is empowering for them. And then the last one, well, last two is one, find a culture and environment that appreciates what you bring to the table and don't settle for less. And I will tell you in my career, I've probably on occasion settled for less, where I won't name the organization, but I was basically came into an organization and I was told, we don't really want to hear about your experience or ideas from the past, right? We just, it's like, it was one of those, if not built here kind of mentalities. And I said, gosh, then why'd you hire me if that experience, that's the diversity of thought, diversity of experience. And I stayed along and I stayed there. And then I realized this is probably not the place where my skills and experience are going to be appreciated. And I probably need to find that right mix for me. I got a great quote on that also that said, make sure you don't start seeing yourself through the eyes of those who don't value you. Know your worth, even if they don't. And I do think when you're looking at different role opportunities, you're looking for not just a great role, because there's a lot of great roles and jobs out there. There's a lot. But if the cultural fit isn't there for you, that is not going to be a long-term success. And I will tell you, coming to KeyBank, I feel like I tell people it's like Goldilocks. I've been where the porridge was a little hot, was a little cold. It's now just right. And what it's right is it's the right role and it's the right culture for me. And every culture and person fit is a little unique and different. But for me, it finally married all those up. And maybe I'm a slow learner, but it took me a little while, but I definitely feel like I found that at Key. And then the last one I'll say is support other women. It's amazing how when you're in the corporate, well, maybe I'll say corporate world, because that's what I've grown up in, but it's amazing how if there's only a couple other women there in that group, the first natural reaction is, and again, I think there's studies on this that would say, you view them as competition versus ally. Because a competition says, oh my gosh, there's only one seat for us here, right? There's only one seat for a woman. And so they're my competition versus, oh my gosh, like we can team up and become so much more of a powerful voice like this. We can support one another. So it's easy to slip into, even at myself, that I consider myself a strong advocate for women. It's easy to make that happen when you're sitting in a room still, even in this day and age, a lot of men and less women in the technology space, and especially usually as you go up in your career. And look for those allies. Now, men allies as well, but definitely treat women as allies, not competition. So that's my kind of what I've learned through the different companies and experience and roles that I've had. But at that point, Marty, I'm happy to open up to questions.
Thanks so much, Kim. And actually, I'll kick things off here. First of all, just reminding everyone, with your questions, feel free to post those in the chat. Feel free to use the Q&A button to post those questions. Or if you want to ask the question directly, just raise your hand. And Sandy and I will pull you out of that participants list, and we'll activate your video and your audio so you can ask Kim and engage with her directly. But Kim, I'd love to kick off. I was taking some notes as you were delivering your introduction there. And one of the things jumped out, can you share a little more? You talked about Capital One, and that was an opportunity for you to raise your hand. Can you talk a little bit about that experience, and what was it that you raised your hand to do, and why was that maybe kind of a risk that you took? And would love to hear more about that.
Well, the first risk to move into Capital One is I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. Kind of thought I would stay in Charlotte. I went to high school there, went off to college, came back, had been 9 years at Bank of America, and thought, gosh, if I just work hard enough, I'll somehow keep moving through the chain. But two interesting things happened. Is one, because I raised my hand at Bank of America and formed a relationship with the gentleman that then went on to Capital One. Two people actually. That opportunity came knocking, where the gentleman reached out to me. One of my mentor, or I'd say sponsors, even less than mentors, reached out to me and said, hey, I really think you would love it in Capital One. I think you would be a great fit. And then the job I interviewed for turned out to be with the other gentleman that I actually did the raise my hand at Bank of America. And he was at the time the CIO for consumer bank at Capital One. So it was a easier interview because he had seen what I was capable of, and felt immediately it was a great fit. The risk, though, was I really had to stare. We had just bought, like a year before, what we thought would be our forever house in Charlotte, and it's like, okay, I need to move to McLean, Virginia. Like, I've got to move to make this happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've always said I want to be a CIO. I always said I wanted to move my career, but this is like a moment of truth. Am I willing to take this risk and move? And you know who convinced me? My husband said, what do you have to lose? You go, it doesn't work out. You've got a great resume. You come back to Charlotte, right? Like what's the harm? If it wasn't for, I'll never forget the day I had said yes. I mean, I had butterflies in my stomach because it was just a leap I hadn't yet contemplated. And it turned out I was with Capital One for 4.5 years. It was the best decision I could have ever made, is to take that risk for myself, for my family. And at the time, it was just my husband and I. From there, I'll be honest, what it also did is unlocked, hey, we can move. Like we can move and be successful. So we we're in McLean, then we went to San Antonio, now we're up in Cleveland. Like we've never gone back to Charlotte, and it's been a really fun ride for not just me and my career, but my family.
That's terrific. And it's interesting. You talked about your husband and support there, and another thing that struck me during your opening remarks when you talked about the supporting other women and kind of that competition piece too, right? So maybe could you share an example of a time when you felt either you felt that, boy, there are others that are clearly competing with me, we're not really supporting each other, or a time when you supported someone else and you were an ally for someone else and helping them progress in their career, even if it maybe cost you an opportunity?
Sure. There at Bank of America, there was another woman. She's now at Wells Fargo, and she was definitely an up and comer at Bank of America, and she's making all the moves I was looking to make, and I always felt, and this was on me, I felt always a step behind, right? Like, how is she? She got a great opportunity to consolidate and converge some key systems that were spread out. That we had two dual systems, one for the north, for the West Coast, and one for the East Coast. She got a lot of great notoriety for successfully bringing those two pieces together at Bank of America, which is no small feat when you're talking the size and scale. And I just remember thinking, and my first reaction was kind of jealousy, was kind of like, she's who I'm going after. And instead, I checked myself, and we had a relationship because we were in some of the same areas, women in tech type of affinity groups and all. And she turned into a wonderful ally where she would tell it to me straight, right? We would talk to each other about our careers. And when I would say, hey, I'm thinking of taking this, again, taking a risk. There was a program where we wanted to create true independence of change between all these different technology platforms and consumer bank. And I was like, I'm going to go for that. I think that's going to be my thing, just like she had a thing that kind of put her on the map. And I talked to her and she said, you know what, Kim, let me tell you what I would be worried about. I do not see the level of support from above to make this successful. They're empowering you, but they're not giving you all that you need to do that. And she became, and when I was thinking about leaving Bank of America, I said, I have this opportunity. She was wonderful of saying, and talking through it with me. And she's like, I think it's a good move. She said, Kim, this progress that she and I are both on is going to take a long time at a company like Bank of America. It could be a faster path if you're willing to take this new opportunity. So she just became, instead of that competition, which first gut reaction was, that was my competition, to really a strong, great sounding board. And she would just tell it to me straight.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. We've got some questions coming in through the chat here. The first is from Lisa Lewandowski. Now, you had talked, Kim, about Key and their culture and kind of the Goldilocks fit, right? So I think Lisa's question, I think, ties right into those remarks. And she asks, can you describe cultural red flags versus cultural good fits?
A great way to, because you're right, when you're interviewing and all, you're looking for those flags, and it's hard to do in an interview, but you're looking for those. One thing I would say is I looked for accessibility at all levels, right? So I wanted to understand how leadership, when I was interviewing, how much were they engaged at all levels in their organization, right? And Key is I feel, now again, I worked at Bank of America, which was very, very large. Key's one of the smaller organizations I've worked for, but even there, they just didn't have the level of hierarchy, right? So that was one aspect that said, okay, this is not a hierarchical type of company which would imply just lack of accessibility to leaders, lack of maybe empowerment of people to, and that's the other thing I looked at is, how did they, I would ask questions about how they felt about empowering their groups and how did they go about it. And in the case of, yeah, being in tech, someone that's embracing and really trying to make the move to a more of an agile type of technology approach. And again, not for the sake of agile, but what agile says to me also is that empowerment at the team level. And those are the type of things you wanted to see in a culture. So those are the ones that definitely stood out. And then when I talked to people and asked about how they would describe the culture, if you get the consistency and a good consistency to what they describe, like one thing they would say at the time I was hired, Beth Mooney was the CEO. And it was all about bring your authentic self to work. I heard that multiple times from multiple people that I interviewed with. You don't tend to get that consistency. I'd love to say people are so fine oiled machine when you interview, but it's not, in the sense of that you can say, oh, everyone's learned to say the same mantra. No, it typically you're hearing what is top of mind for the different people you're interviewing. So that bring your authentic self to work was an important element of the culture. And so those are the things that stood out for me of bring your authentic self. Is there accessibility at different levels? And how do they think about empowerment? Those are the things I was looking for that says, this is a culture that either is already exactly what we need it to be, or at least they want to aspire to that. And I'll take aspiring as well.
Thanks, Kim. And thanks again, Lisa, for the question. Next question came through the Q&A. Actually, these are kind of, I think, in a nice sequence. So this is from an anonymous attendee. Well, how long do you recommend staying with a company before deciding if that culture, if that environment is the right fit? And I don't know if that's how long is too long or how short is too short, but what are kind of your guidelines there, Kim, and throughout your career?
Yeah, and from my perspective, I think within 2 to 3 years, you're going to know. The first year is honeymoon period. Like you're drinking through a fire hose, you're learning things. I call it the honeymoon period, because it's everything shiny and new to you. You're shiny and new to other people. So for the most part, that first year is whirlwind. The second year, and also you don't know when you're coming in to the company's planning processes and different. So you need a whole year after kind of getting yourself situated to really see the company behave throughout the entire year. And then I think you have, and that's why I say 2 to 3, you can make potentially some small adjustments. Maybe the particular area you're in, the company's great, but maybe the area you ended up in is not a perfect fit for you. So you may not leave the company, but you might look for another opportunity there. So I would say anywhere from 2 to 3 years is what I believe it would take for you to know. And I will tell you, trust your gut. What I would say, the reason I'd say stay for, unless it's just a horrible situation, and you would know that. If you have your nagging doubts, don't go to your first flight reaction. Settle. Just make sure it's that you're thinking it through clearly and really think of all the different good and pros and cons. But by year 2, going into 3, trust your gut. And my gut told me I was unhappy. And yet, in a couple cases, I stayed longer than I should have, or I was stalled in my career, and I just kept hoping for that miracle. Well, there is no miracle, right? Those things don't happen. You either forge your path, those opportunities get presented, or over time, if they're not going to, then go forge your own path.
That's great advice, Kim. I'm curious, just because we've had at Tech Elevator, we've had our students and graduates in situations where, they take that first job out of here and they're a week into their job and they're already, their guts telling them this isn't good. And for arguably very valid reasons. And it ties into a lot of what you shared before about, accessibility and engagement and empowerment, and kind of realizing really quickly that in some cases, this is just maybe the way it works here, and the management's very closed off, and I'm not going to have a lot of, and it's very clear from the beginning. Or in a worst case scenario, gosh, they hired me because I'm a female, but they have no they have no idea what to do next. I don't fit in. There's no intentionality to trying to figure out how to integrate me in the team. It was almost like I was kind of a token hire. We've had students kind of share that feedback with us, and they're like, I don't want to wait a year. So my question to you would be, when people are in that situation, like your gut's telling you right off the bat, this isn't good. How do you then, and let's say you have an opportunity to transition out before a year and you're still and you're in a better place. What do you do with your resume? What do you do in an interview when somebody asks you, hey, you were only at ABC company for 6 months? Like, what happened there?
I know from someone that if I'm interviewing and I see that kind of quick turn or short time frame, be candid. I just think honesty is the best policy. If you say, you know what, I really want to make an impact, like what you just described, I'd say, I went to make an impact, and it appears that the environment was not really set up and conducive for me to be able to come in there and have an impact. And I'm excited to do that. I've got the energy. Look, I just spent the time at Tech Elevator. That's an investment. That says I really want to make a difference. And I want to come to a company that has the cultural fit and the desire to make an impact that I could be a part of. So I quickly turn it to the excitement for where you're headed versus necessarily belaboring it, but be honest about it, right? Be honest that was not a place I could make the impact. I wouldn't go necessarily unless it was really, really bad and say, hey, they just have this thing where they just don't understand women. But I would definitely go into this is who I am. This is what I get passion and energy from. And I'm looking for a place that could use people like me.
Thank you. And folks, please keep the questions coming. We've got a couple more coming through the Q&A, but feel free again, throw some questions in the chat, or if you want to ask Kim some questions directly, go ahead, raise your hand and we'll unmute you so we can engage. Another question here in the chat is from Tammy Diesloff, who's actually one of our Tech Elevator students. So Tammy, welcome this morning. So Tammy says, I love the advice to say yes and raise our hands. Do you have any advice for making sure those yeses get reflected in compensation and job title? Historically, women have often taken on more responsibility without benefiting from that extra effort.
I have experienced that myself. I have also just recently had a great win mentoring someone at Key that was, and she just got her promotion, which was fabulous. There does seem to be, and I don't think this is a woman thing, there does tend to be a desire to see someone perform in the role prior to necessarily always giving all the trappings that come with the role. Now, if we assume positive intent, and a lot of times it's because we don't, and I've enlisted this process myself, is I don't want to set someone up for failure. What does that mean? When you're promoted into that next level, your peer group that you're going to be kind of assessed against, right, as part of pay for performance, is at a different level and a different expectation level. So if someone was put in there without having the ability to really kind of stand solidly in that area, then your person that was emerging talent that you're like, gosh, I want to promote them, you've just potentially derailed a little bit their career, because it's like, oh, right, they used to be really good, but we put them in this new position and they're struggling. Well, that's the last thing you want as a leader. Like that is like a tragedy for me, that I elevate someone and then they struggle because I didn't prepare them as well as I could for that. So I do think there's that element. However, I do think direct conversations, and that's the mentoring I did with this one person. I said, you make sure it's clear that you're taking on the role with the expectation that this role qualified, right, is of a certain level, and that you will start to perform in that role, and expect that promotion will be there. And don't let go. When you have the opportunities, and I'm not saying you write them every day, but when you're doing your check-ins, your performance check-ins once a quarter, whatever, you have every right to mention it and say, how am I doing? Because remember, we know this role is actually a level up. Am I getting at a place where I can actually, I'm performing at the level that you would feel comfortable providing that. Now, if at some point that just never comes, then we gotta switch you out. I also have a mentee right now that actually she works in my organization now, and it wasn't coming. It just continued to be in the future. And then we said, okay, so what do you want to do? You can leave Key. I would hope not, because she really liked Key. We took her in a different direction with her career, and it's been exciting to watch. She's received the recognition that she was qualified to have. So I think that's my advice as to how you navigate that. But it's not uncommon to be doing the job for some time before that comes, but you don't let go of that.
Well, you keep following up, like you said. Yeah. That's great advice. Another great question just came in through the chat. This is from Caitlin. Hi, Kim. Can you share a time where you started to slip into the mindset of how others might see or doubt you? And you mentioned that, in your opening remarks, kind of seeing yourself through your own eyes, maybe not through. And what did you do to refocus and know your worth in that moment?
I definitely, I've probably had it a couple of times, but earlier in my career where I really, I was leading a technology team, a small team that was developing new software, teller software for the banking industry. And there was another, interesting enough, woman, this is where I say be allies, don't be competitors, where she just, it seemed like she wanted my job, and I could say I was being paranoid, but I was pretty thinking that was where we were headed. She felt she could do the job better, and so she was talking to other leaders, saying, you know what, I can do that job. I don't know that Kim's doing as good a job, and it was tough. It was a tough new product that we were trying to build from scratch in Java when Java was very young. So it wasn't an easy, it was a very challenging opportunity, which I loved, but that undermining behind, hearing that kind of underlying current of maybe Kim's not meant for this job, maybe that she's not successful. We had a couple releases that didn't come out when they needed to. And I then received, she came to me and said, you know what, you're a really great business analyst. And I'm like, wow, like that's, and so I was like, oh my gosh. And this is early in my career. I'm like, maybe I'm not meant for the role that I want. I really saw myself ultimately being a CIO. And I was like, maybe this isn't, I can't do this. Maybe she, and it started to definitely, with some of the delays and all, I started to put one and one together, and I got three. I should have got two, I got three. And what it really took, a couple things is, right, wrong, or indifferent, the way I handled it is, one, I got myself out of that situation, right? I actually moved, the undercurrent was just too much of worrying about having a target on my back. So I went to a different company, and quite frankly, reset my mindset, moving to another company. And I said, even though my confidence was somewhat shaken, I was like, you know what, Kim, try again. Like, and I will be honest, I had some great friends that were like, no, you're letting someone get in your head. You're letting the situation get in your head. And so trust your people, your friends, and whoever, significant other, friends, if you have mentors at that time, but go to them and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I did. And they said, one situation, go to the next. I went to the next, and I had some wins. That's the other thing I saw someone say is, when you have a win, write it down. Write it down on a, very digital of me, but write it down on a Post-it note. When someone says, oh my gosh, you know what, you really helped me as a leader do X, Y, Z, or you had a good day, you nailed something, right? You nailed a presentation, you nailed a solution. Write it down. Write down your affirmations, keep them around you. Because those are data points that combat that one data point on that one day, or that's making you struggle. If you don't get it from other people, get it from yourself. And so that's what I've learned to do. And I still, to this day, I mean, you've heard of the imposter syndrome. Still to this day, I have times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a fake. Like, I can't really do this. And then I go back in my brain of all the achievements and things, that successes that I and my team have had. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not always going to be perfect, but I'm darn good at this. So I have to just keep being my own advocate.
Great advice, Kim. I love that. Write down your wins. I wrote that down, actually. I think that's wonderful. Couple more questions here. So we still got a little bit of time here left with Kim. And then Kim, I know you've got to run, but if you're able to stick around for anything, you're more than welcome to, as we kind of move forward here this morning. So I wanted to piggyback off of Caitlin's question, which I think was excellent. What advice would you give to, we probably have some career changers who've joined us this morning, who are looking to pivot into a career in tech, and they might have to start, at the ground floor. And again, I can speak from the perspective of a Tech Elevator student coming through Tech Elevator. Now I want to be a software developer, so I'm going for an entry-level role. But we see this happen with a lot of our women graduates. Hey, you've got a degree in accounting, or you had this job. What about that business analyst role? You'd make a good business analyst. That's why I want to be a developer. Well, but you have great people skills, right? What is that something you've experienced? You kind of shared a little bit about that, but what advice would you give? It's like, how do you break through that and still get the opportunity you want versus maybe the opportunity they're trying to convince you should want?
One, stick to your guns. Like, don't let that sway you. I'll give a maybe stupid example, but it sticks in my mind. As a kid, I wanted to play the drums. I went to the music store and I walked away with a clarinet. I hate the clarinet. I was terrible at the clarinet. Who knows? I would have been good at the drums, but someone convinced me when I walked in that music store to pick up whatever, that I should have a clarinet. It's like, dang it, I love drums, but I didn't end up with the drums. And I didn't end up playing the clarinet either. Over time, it was terrible. But to that point, here's what I would say, and here's how you can kind of use it. You may absolutely have great soft skills and great analyst skills. And what I'd say is, you're right, I do. That will make me a better developer. Because guess what? As a developer, the best developers are the ones that don't just think they're building widgets. They understand the business need that is driving what you're trying to build. And I guarantee I can then build it better. I can improve upon it because I have the ability to not just do it. And by the way, I can actually talk to your business partner. Like, I can bridge a gap that some developers can't. So you're right. I actually have extra skills. I have the development skills and I have that soft skills. When you're in an agile world, if you're not getting along with your Scrum team or with your dependent other teams that you have to do development with, you're right. I've got great soft skills. I'm going to collaborate really darn well with the other developers, because last I checked, it takes more than one developer to build systems. And it takes more than one team. You're working with other teams. So you're right. I do have those skills, which is why I think I'm even that much of a stronger developer, because I have that and I have the development skills as well. And I can demonstrate that. So you're right. I have those. That's how I'm going to bring all those to use. So turn them, like, don't combat it. Don't defend against it. Those are good skills to have. And let me tell you, when I find that what I call a unicorn that's able to talk to the business, understand what they're building and why they're building it, and the business strategy behind it. I mean, I insist all my developers better be able to explain to me. I say that so harshly, but I'm passionate. I want my developers to say, when I ask them, hey, what are you doing? If they say, well, I'm building this screen. No. I'm building a capability to allow the business to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, you're getting it. Like, that is what we need to be saying. And who are you talking to? Oh, why? I reached out to so-and-so and I wanted to understand more about how this is built and how this works. So that is emerging talent on my team. That's what I'm looking for.
You're hired. You convinced me. Oh my goodness. That was wonderful, Kim. Thank you. A couple more questions for Kim, and then we're going to bring up
Sure.
Ivy here next. Lisa in the Q&A asked, you mentioned mentoring mentee relationships. How do you set up to have a mentor? How do you go about doing that?
You know, I will be honest. I think I've really worked hard to be a great mentor. I was terrible at first finding my own mentor myself. And I tell you, I kind of, some of the ones I had just fell into it, but that's not a good answer. Here's the mentees that I have. You know what they did? They reached out and asked me. They said, hey, Kim, I see something here. I was so inspired by what you talked about at X. I would love if you have time to be my mentor. And guess what? I've said yes to every single one. Now, at some point you can only have so many, but right now I'm mentoring 1, 2, 3, 4 people at Key. Because if someone's coming to me and they know why they want a mentor, and it doesn't mean they're not all these people are looking for a particular career trajectory. They're just looking to better themselves. So find a person that inspires you, find a person that you feel like you can learn from, and then ask them if they would mentor you. I guarantee 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes.
That's great. Thanks for the question, Lisa. Thanks again, Kim. One more question here for Kim, and this comes from Kathina Vaus. What advice and or encouragement would you give for older women wanting to make a career change to a developer? And is there a market for them?
Yes, 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 and yes. Here's the great news right now. And I'd say use it to your advantage. Use whatever opportunities are presented to yourself. One, organizations, just to say, like Women Who Code, they are all about, actually their big focus is bringing women who might have been in tech, left the workforce, coming back, or doing a career change. That is what that whole organization is there to do, is to help and support one another in finding those opportunities. So one, I would say, look for those type of organizations and join them, because I think it could absolutely open doors, and they can help it, you understand how to go about looking for those type of opportunities. The other thing I'd say is, right now, more than ever, companies understand diverse talent of all sorts, right? It could be gender, it could be race, it could be just different experiences, is so critically important that you have an opportunity that more people, or probably more than ever before, are going to be looking at your resume. And so I would say there's nothing about being a woman or older in your career that should hold you back. And don't let that be a mindset for you. It has nothing to do with how well you can do what you're doing. Actually, what I'd say is all those experiences of different types that led up to that probably makes you even that much more well-rounded. The fact that you're doing it tells me you have a growth mindset, you're a learner. I'm going to take that all day long. So I would say you put yourself out there, look on those sites, find those opportunities, and apply. Because I promise you, your resume is going to stand out. And then I'd also say, look for those type of organizations, like a Women Who Code organization, and join those, because that's exactly, and there's, I'm sure others, that's one I know about for sure. I think Anita Board might have some local chapters, but join those. They will create, they absolutely can open doors.
Kim, thank you so much. Thank you for putting yourself out here this morning and for sharing your story and some really wonderful advice throughout your session here. I know we can't see or hear each other, but maybe from wherever it is you're calling in, if we could give everyone, give Kim a round of applause in any way that you see fit in your homes. Kim, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. This was so much fun. This was fun. I'm going to hang out for a little bit and listen to some insight from Ivy, but thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Next up, folks, we have another wonderful leader from the Cleveland area, Michelle Tomelo. So Michelle is co-founder of Fit Technologies and has served in many roles during the company's history, from client services to account management to operations. She currently focuses on human resources as the Chief People Officer and is a driving force of the culture at FIT. She is on the board of Plexus LGBTQ and Allied Chamber of Commerce and was a board member for the Gay Games, which took place here in Cleveland not too long ago. She's also an advisor on the Greater Cleveland Partnerships Equity and Inclusion Board, and In Gear is a member of the Warehouse District Inc. board and an alum of Leadership Cleveland. Michelle supports many nonprofits through virtual events and fundraisers and is active in the neighborhoods in which she lives and works. She's a community garden leader, enjoys cycling, running, and patronizing local restaurants and retailers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce you to Michelle Tomla.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here. And Marty, I appreciate the introduction and love talking about those civic connections as we have this conversation this morning. I think some of those themes will come out of this when I share some thoughts about my path and my career. So, and I'm just going to say, I love hearing from Kim and Ivy, and yeah, we all, well, I don't know about me, but they all need like 1 hour shows themselves for sure. Just keep talking. So, hi everyone. I'm Michelle Tomallo. I'm one of the co-founders of Fit Technologies, and as Marty said, we're a managed IT services firm headquartered here in Cleveland. And I wanted to spend just a few minutes to share a little bit about Fit and what we do and the types of roles we have. Mostly because Fit isn't a household brand like KeyBank or Sherwin-Williams or Verizon. Plus, many of you attending this session today may have skills and experience where you could come and work for a firm like ours. So we're a managed IT services firm, which means our team acts as the technology department for our clients and acts as their strategic IT partner to leverage tech to help them meet their goals, help them thrive, help them navigate the growing complexity that continues to evolve with technology. As a managed service provider, our team is made up of a variety of roles that provide support every day to our clients. We handle everything on the infrastructure side of things, so not necessarily software development, but back end. So from help desk, so if a client has an issue, it's actually our team that they're calling, our help desk here located in Cleveland, to the on-site field support that we do. We have a whole team of network, server, phone, and security engineers. Plus we manage thousands of projects for our clients, big and small, whether it's designing an IT for an entire new office build out or cloud migrations, or doing something as simple, maybe not simple, moving from a Google shop to a Microsoft shop. And while my colleagues here today work with thousands of employees, my experience is quite different in that I've worked in small to mid-sized companies in my career. And currently we have 130 staff at Fit, serving clients in about 25 states throughout the United States. Our clients are mid-sized firms that are also in a variety of sectors: architecture and design, marketing and other professional services, construction, law firms, healthcare, retail, and K-12 charter schools all over the United States. And I wanted to share a little bit about our company now, which is important to know when you hear about how our company actually started. So in 1999, which was 22 years ago, which is hard to believe, I was doing consulting work, as was my business partner, Mickey Tubbs, and Mickey is the other co-founder. Mickey actually just retired in June. And so she has her own amazing entrepreneurial story as well. So in 1999, it was actually Mickey's brother came to us and said, hey, there is nothing in the market right now that connects home and school. So, back in 1999, you could order pizza online and you could buy plane tickets online, but you couldn't find out whether your kid could wear khakis that day or had chemistry homework. And so Dan had this idea. He already had a couple developers who were on board developing web-based software. Dan came to us thinking that Mickey is a serial entrepreneur, so that would be fantastic to bring her expertise. And I really had only worked in startups, and I was young-ish. I was 27 at the time, and Dan came to us, and we were thinking that we were going to work for 6 to 8 months to get some startup capital, because this was before the tech bubble bust, so getting money was easier. And so we thought we were going to work 6 to 8 months. We'd get some equity in the business, and then we would both go back to our consulting gigs. So we had a fantastic first venture meeting. And again, one of the things that we can talk a little bit about too, about what's different in terms of now and then, is it was really challenging to navigate how to get funding, especially for a tech company, especially in Cleveland at that time. We have made amazing strides since then. It's part of this feeling like we're a little bit ahead of the curve. So we had our first venture meeting. This person loved it. This person's mom was a teacher. The wife was a teacher. Totally got this concept of having a portal that could do that. And many of you probably have Blackboard and Progress Book and those sort of things, but there was nothing like that to market. So we thought we were going to get $3 million, a chunk of money to hire more developers and just start the development of this web-based software. 2 days after that meeting, boom, first gigantic drop in the stock market. The tech bubble bust started. And so we never got a big chunk of dollars. And so over the course of 18-ish months, we got funding in fits and starts, teeny bits of funding, and all that went toward hiring database developers and software developers and UI folks to help us design this. So I'm going to fast forward for those of you who are Seinfeld fans. I'm going to yada, 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 a whole bunch of things. And in fact, people who know me know that I often say that the history of Fit should be an HBO miniseries, because there's a whole lot that's happened in 22 years. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. We would have small sort of growth in our company over some time. We had a lot of traction headed into 2001, headed into the school year for 2001. And again, our clients at this time are schools who we want to implement this web-based software. When that implementation would start, many schools would say, hey, your software doesn't work. And we would say, oh, our software does work. But what didn't work was the entire infrastructure on which schools' networks had been developed. Because again, there wasn't web-based technology that was crunching all of this data and doing this kind of communication. And also at that time, schools were starting to use multimedia, Discovery Channel and other sources. And so all that was just putting this entire pressure on everything that was happening in these schools. So it was at that time that then we said, okay, we have our whole team of developers. We need a team of infrastructure specialists, engineers, and others to assess our clients' environments so that we can set them up for success to even use this software. And I'll also pause here to say the other sort of interesting thing about the evolution of our company is that we were ahead of the curve from the perspective of, we thought that we were selling web-based software. We thought we were, taking people into this next step into innovation. We were really selling the idea that the internet is going to stay and it is going to change profoundly how we consume and request data. Because again, you can imagine back then, someone's getting a piece of paper out of a filing cabinet at schools, and we were setting that completely on its head to say, how could we have data in real time at schools? So here's this kind of parallel track that we're developing software, and we have this team of specialists who are doing assessments to start to improve infrastructure. That part of our business also continues to grow as we're developing this software. So I'm going to yada, yada, yada. Boop. We're at the recession. So it's 08-ish, we still have our group of school clients, but we now have more and more infrastructure clients. It's at that time we make a move downtown Cleveland. We were out in Lorain County for years. And then once we moved downtown, we started having organizations say to us, hey, can you come look at our computer systems? And again, up to that point, all of our clients are schools. And so we realized we needed to rebrand our company to be able to handle this managed IT business line. So our software was called School One, and we branded Fit Technologies about that time that we moved downtown, about 2007, so that we could then talk to organizations like Tech Elevator or the law firm across the street or IdeaStream here in the building where we are to say, hey, we can help you with your infrastructure. We can help with your help desk and field support and all of those sort of things. So then we had some good growth. And at that time, the other thing that's interesting is managed IT was very much considered a commodity where people would call us and say, hey, what's your hourly rate? Oh, $74. I'm going to hang up because someone said that theirs was $72. That was not how we were approaching our organization at all. We were invested in a partnership model where we were developing long-term relationships with our clients. So it's exciting times. Then the recession happens, and some of you might be my age-ish or a little older and remember much of that, but work stopped, business stopped. We had to figure out, like thousands and thousands and thousands of companies across the United States, how do you survive? And so it became abundantly clear that we needed to focus on our managed IT services business and divest ourselves of the software business. And so that took some time, but we made that happen. And it's definitely one of those lessons around that was probably abundantly clear to many people leading up to the recession, and we didn't have to see it, so we didn't look at it. And so that was one of those lessons that was amazingly painful for us because it put a ton of stress on our business, but it really is the silver lining of how we got to here. And, selling that off and being super focused on what kind of company we want to be, what kind of clients do we want to have, how are we going to kind of go to market that way. And, around 2013, it was almost like we were a new startup again. We had about 250 staff. So we had between those two endeavors. And then in 2013, we were at 25 staff. So that was just this great opportunity to reinvent ourselves and focus on what made sense for us and what we did well. And I think that that's another message that you heard Kim and Ivy share of not only does an organization need to figure out what we do well and what aligns to our values, we as people, I think, need to do the same thing. Heard that over and over again, how we can be successful that way. So since 2013, our company has just been on an amazing growth trajectory. I think the market is one of those things that's lending itself to this. Obviously, the pandemic has been an outside force that, while unbelievably challenging, has underscored for many people the importance of technology, the importance of infrastructure, because people are working remotely and working in new ways. And so we have just seen this wonderful growth from the perspective also of technology continuing to evolve, becoming more complex, And so the idea of having an entire team supporting your organization, as opposed to thinking we could get lucky to have one or two generalists. If you're a 50-person company, you have one or two generalists that can kind of manage what needs to happen now in this environment. My thought is no, it's getting more and more complicated as we go. So we've also been really lucky that we have focused on what kind of organizations we want to partner with, what kind of clients. Does it make sense for us to serve? And again, it goes back to that wanting to be with organizations that have shared values about their reliance on tech, their value of tech, and this idea of wanting to use that to help them grow and thrive. And we have some really wonderful growing clients that has continued to help us grow. So I'm going to pause there and just, let you just ask some questions. So that's way more exciting.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And, really appreciate you being here today and being able to offer, certainly a different perspective, right? So entrepreneur, and I love that, HBO miniseries analogy and all the twists and turns. And, I wrote down the word evolve. You've had to very quickly adapt and evolve throughout the history of FIT, certainly. And I think that parallels a lot of what Kim and what Ivy have been sharing earlier today in regards to their own personal careers and kind of this moving sideways and shifting where there's opportunity. So I think your perspective here this morning is really, really valuable. And so given this long, history of, the ups and downs and twists and turns, and with the gift of hindsight, if you can think back to when you first started out, what advice would you give yourself now?
So starting out, I think one of those lessons for sure, and I was reminded of it even before we started the company, but life doesn't go as planned. And I think that our ability then to navigate life that's not going as planned is really how we become who we are. So, what does that resilience look like for you? What does the ability to kind of, if the life doesn't go as planned because of not the greatest of circumstances, how do we get back up? How do we not let potentially failures or missteps then cause us to be paralyzed or risk averse or stop ourselves where we are in our path? And that's, I think in some ways I knew that intuitively, but it's been interesting because being part of growing an organization just underscored all of that for me. And I think that the other thing that I would say about, what can I tell myself? Well, again, maybe I knew it intuitively, but you really need to have good advisors around you. And again, maybe those are business advisors. And again, Ivy and Kim talks a lot about mentors, but having people you can rely on to bounce things off of, whether that's family, whether that's from a business perspective. And I tell that story about in hindsight, when we think about when we were making some decisions in the organization, if we had maybe a larger board of advisors, and I'm using that, that could be informal, but really bouncing some of that off of them, would we have ended up in a different place? So I think having advisors and people you can rely on, and I always also have said, it was early in my career, someone asked some of those, lessons learned sort of things. And I was saying, you need to have a good florist, you need to have a good attorney, you need to have a good hairstylist, you need to have a good dermatologist, and you need to have a good trainer. So you got to keep it all together, all that.
It's a hairstylist. I think I could cross that off my list.
It's hard work. I mean, being,
Yeah.
having your own business, being part of a startup, all of those are unique challenges in many ways. And so you need the support to be able to lift you up to do it.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. We've got a question that's come in here from Lisa in the Q&A. Lisa asks kind of a technical question: infrastructure skills versus software developer skills. Can you share kind of specific tools that are necessary for each? Like what kinds of languages does one need to be familiar with, for example, and where does security fit into these, if at all?
Well, so I think that, and this is a theme that I believe that I heard Ivy and Kim saying this same. When we look at what's going to make people successful in our organization, and I think it's not just this organization, but I was in healthcare before. I think that it's the same part of that. If you are bright and you have a learner mindset and you want to be curious and you want to grow, those are ways in which you can be successful. So I, of course, I don't want to, I don't want to be like the mom who has the favorite kid, but I'm saying, since I've had experience in software development side of things and infrastructure, it's very, very challenging to say, which is better or which is more important. We all know over and over and over and again, anyone who wants to get in tech, like all of us, some of our takeaway, all of us need to be telling family, friends, colleagues, others about how many roles there are available in tech, not only now, but that will continue into the future. We have to be really great ambassadors for technology and being in these fields. So I really do believe that when you have that mindset to be a learner, I think that that's how you can be successful. I'm not a technologist, so I think both of those roles, you're solving problems. And one of the other things that I've shared several times is my background is business. And I thought technology was way more science, but technology is a lot of art. There are a lot of considerations. There many times isn't one answer. There's multiple answers. And then you're troubleshooting either with your team or with a client or with others to figure out then what's the best path? What are the considerations of that? And so that to me is also a way that think about your skills and how your brain wants to work, because the problems that you're solving are different, but you're going to need to do that as a core part of what it is that you're either developing on the back end or the front end.
Thanks, Michelle. So another perspective that you provide that's unique on the panel in terms of how it relates back to our audience and individuals who might be looking to make a career pivot, and maybe what are the advantages, things to think about if one's considering going to work for a startup, right? What's different about that if I'm going into infrastructure or as a software developer, a database administrator, the positions you hired early on? What's different about that versus a Key or Visible or Verizon or Sherwin-Williams?
Well, and this may be true depending on what teams you're on in those organizations, but I will say this idea of having a mindset where you want to jump into what's going on, jump into what's happening. I don't think anyone here at FIT would say, oh, wow, I was in a month-long training program and then I was given X to do. Nope. You're going to be training while you're engaging with a client. You're going to be training while you're on the phone with a client. You're going to be training while you're sitting in front of a CEO with a team member, and you're navigating a roadmap with that CEO. So I think one of the things that's different is this ability to feel comfortable going into an organization and having some tools, but then you're going to be doing a lot of the navigating. How do you use those tools? You'll be doing a lot of raising your hand and saying, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I don't understand. Kind of that feedback loop of sharing with team leads or others what you might need to do your job better, and then also being open to the feedback that's coming from you, from your teammates.
Thank you. We've got time for maybe 2 more questions here for Michelle. And one relates back to your community involvement. So, you just as all the leaders we have here this morning, very actively engaged in many different community efforts. Ivy talked about something she kind of, not work-life balance, but work-life integration. So the question is, how do you make the time and how do you choose where you're going to focus your efforts outside of work?
So being engaged in the community, involved in the community, I know is a core value for myself and Mickey, and it's one of those things that we definitely see as, being a good corporate citizen as well. So knowing that FIT has a role in terms of supporting nonprofits and being involved in different events and those sort of things, and then personally, I think it's a natural part of who I am to want to have a bigger circle that I'm part of. And, whether it was when I was in healthcare or whether when we were doing software development or even now, it's this opportunity to be an ambassador for any number of things. So for us being in Playhouse Square, we definitely saw some of our role of being good neighbors and how do we be part of the economic development here. I mentioned that it will be great for any and all of us on this call that we're on a regular basis being tech career ambassadors, telling people about opportunities that may be in the market, or connected them to organizations like Tech Elevator and other, technology proponent consortiums and things like that. And in terms of, this is advice for anyone. I highly recommend that people, figure out what they're passionate about, what their interests are. And in, in a region like we're in, there is an organization, of course, that would love your passion, your time, your resources, because we have such great work that's going on here in so many nonprofits, let alone so many other types of organizations that might be working with any population, whether it's kids or dogs or seniors or other groups. So thinking about what's of interest to you, and then seeking out seasoned professionals like myself or others who can help point you in the right direction so that you are putting your time toward an organization that is of interest to you. I'll share something here. I was talking with a young professionals group, and someone was saying, I wanted to get some board experience, so I just joined any board. And I was saying, no, don't just join any board. One, that's just a disservice to you. It's a disservice to the organization. You want to join a board that you have interest and passion for, because as a board member, there's work to be done. So.
Thanks, Michelle. We are right at time. So thank you so much again for sharing your story and your journey and all, again, the ups and downs and the ins and outs and the twists and turns. It's really, really fascinating. And, some really, really wonderful takeaways from what you shared today, Michelle. Thanks so much, everyone. Again, round of applause from your various locations. send that energy to Michelle. And Michelle, again, I know you've got to run, but you're welcome to stay through as much as you can here with Angie's session, which is coming up here next.
Much.
Thank you. All right, folks. We are at our last session this morning, and our final leader that's being featured today is Angie Klein, and it's my pleasure to introduce her to you. Angie is the CEO of Visible, which is the first all-digital wireless carrier in the U.S., which is owned by Verizon. She's a high-energy, results-oriented leader with a vast experience in commercial marketing and sales. Klein's an expert in consumer postpaid and prepaid mobile businesses, product line management, call center and retail operations, customer relationship management, and strategic planning. With a 20-year tenure at Verizon and an extensive background in managing startups within the telecommunications giant, Angie's uniquely poised to lead this brand through its next stages of growth and innovation. Prior to Visible, Angie was Senior Vice President of Consumer Segment Marketing for Verizon, where she led value proposition development and pricing across the Verizon Consumer Group, as well as consumer home services, including Verizon Fios and 5G Home. Angie holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Nebraska in both business and journalism. She's also been recognized as an alumni master by her alma mater. And Klein was named a David Rockefeller Fellow and serves on the boards of the Lower East Side Girls Club in New York City and the Buckle. Ladies and gentlemen, Angie Klein.
Marty, thank you. And during the middle of that, my internet connection said internet unstable. So I may have to, this is not a Verizon connection. It is a Spectrum connection. So I want to make sure everybody knows that if I have any internet issues today, I am totally blaming Spectrum. So anyway, Marty, thanks for the introduction. I am very happy to be here with all of you guys. So as he said, I'm Angie Klein. I am the fairly new CEO of Visible. I joined this role in late May. And so I'm really, really grateful to the Cleveland Partnership Tech Week and Tech Elevator for having me here. So, and to be able to talk about Visible and to talk about my career a little bit. So as you said, we're the first all digital wireless carrier in the US. So what does that mean? It really means we have no stores, no paper bills, no call centers. So everything's really done in our app or online, unlike the traditional carriers, which have a heavy retail presence, big call centers. So that means, effectively more cost. And so our pricing as a result is really truly accessible. It's unlimited for as low as $25 a month. And it's on the Verizon's network because we're a division or owned by Verizon. So that also is a benefit, knowing that we get the access to the best network at some of the lowest prices because we really focused on making things really simple. So hearing Michelle talk about startups, we're like, I call it, we're like a startup with suspenders. We operate exactly internally into Verizon, but as a startup might, we are independently operating with all the scrappiness, creativity, thinking outside of the box, challenging the industry norms, doing all that, but we also have the backing and resources, the big V behind us. So I often joke, we're like kids with really wealthy parents, but we have to be careful. We have to make sure that they don't cut off the purse strings for us. So we've got to be mature and use the capital and the investment wisely and start to show a return. So, I'm really proud to say that we're a company that not only leads with innovation, but with purpose and heart as well. So we just changed our mission, or I'd say modified it a bit when I came on board to really look at where we want to go. And now we're on a mission to reimagine what wireless should be: radically simple, fundamentally accessible, and audaciously inclusive. And so I know all of you listening today are probably a lot like me. We've all chosen careers in technology. So today I'll probably share a little bit more about my background, my experience as a woman in tech, and some advice that I hope you'll all find helpful. And then of course the Q&A, which is probably the more fun part for everybody. But just to tell you a little bit of history about my career, my first brush with the corporate world came when I was in college at the University of Nebraska. So I was like one of those students on campus that was kind of involved in a fair amount of stuff, but I also did a lot of campus tours. for people that came to visit the campus, thought about going. So I could walk backwards and talk for 2 hours, and on my right and your left, you'll find that whatever, but I knew a lot about the campus, but I also was just not shy about being in front of people. I was majoring in marketing and advertising. And while giving a campus tour, there were a bunch of distinguished women alumni that had come back as a group. One of the women in the group was Celia Swanson. She was an EVP at Walmart. She was actually, I think, the highest woman at Walmart at the time. And she and I hit it off. And by the end of the tour, she had told me she wanted to hire me, which I still think about, wow, But that next week, I think it was that next week, I flew down to Arkansas to meet the team and go through the official interview process at the retail giant. And that's how I landed my first real internship in corporate America. And I grew up in farm country in Nebraska, in a town of less than 1,000 people. I'd never really pictured myself in the corporate world. So even though I was going into marketing and advertising, what that meant, I think when I was young, I didn't really understand. And let's be honest, I'm not young anymore, but that experience at Walmart was the first time I think that I got a taste of what like that type of life was like. And I could actually picture myself in a world, in a role like that. And I don't diminish at all the impact it had on me, just in recognition of the possibility alone that another woman from Nebraska had made it so big. Just that impact on me. So I think that's why it's important for conversations like this, and that I've had a lot of lucky opportunities that I've put myself out there. I'm getting my internet unstable. Marty, can you see me still? Okay, good. But to talk to other people and to give those kind of inspiring little parts of life, because it matters to people. I think about that. It mattered to me, and seeing other people like you in roles makes you think it's more of a possibility. So thanks to that amazing internship, I not only gained a ton of scalable marketing knowledge, but I also gained a lot of confidence, I'd say, in myself, and being able to chart my own course. And afterward, I interviewed with a number of companies. And although I had this really great offer with Walmart, there was just something about that. I got an offer at Verizon. Verizon was just Verizon at the time. They had just been created. That was really compelling to me. It was a 2-year development program, which translated to me as paid learning. So I didn't think I had answers yet. I still had to learn, but that allowed me to gain experience across multiple disciplines at Verizon and the chance to live in multiple places over the 2 years of the program. So it was a lot more money, to be honest, as well, which I think is a great thing about the tech sector too. And so that was actually a driver of my choice, but I took that role, and I've actually been here ever since, 20 years later. So I just celebrated 20 years in July, which is hard to believe. And, I've lived all over. I moved from Nebraska at the time to Dallas, then to LA, and then to DC, and then to New Jersey and New York City. And at the end of this week, I will be moving to Denver. So this new role. So lots of places I got to see as part of my wonderful career at Verizon. But even in my first few years at Verizon, I took on new roles and new challenges that I would probably never have thought possible prior. I earned a reputation pretty early on for always placing a relentless focus on the customer, and not being shy about challenging the ways the industry did things, despite my level. I sometimes give the story of, depending on how old you are, you may not know this movie, but it's one of my favorite movies, Big. When Tom Hanks is in the room with all the corporate execs and they're talking about the toys, and he's like, I don't get it. I don't get why we're doing that. I used to say that was me when I was young in my career, because I was just oblivious to the fact that I was challenging things that had always been done that way. But it was because in my brain, it didn't work that way. So, and I think that's a good thing to be when you have different perspective and you're not grounded in the industry or the things that have been, the reasons things have been done. You see them from a different perspective, and no matter your level or how long you've been in the industry or how long you've been in the workforce, that perspective is really important. It's really important to have. Now, it's also good to understand there's reasons why some decisions are made, but so I think it was kind of that perspective and that personality trait of mine, along with some lucky breaks that put me actually on our big fiber to the home bet. It was about $20 billion investment. And that was just getting started. And as a result, it provided me a little bit more white space to contribute and make an impact. And in that first, I think it was I don't remember what year it was, but it was early 2004. I was an entry-level manager or marketer, individual contributor. It was October of 2005. I had risen 3 levels to my first executive level. I was only 27. But I was a director of customer experience. And that was years before customer experience roles were common in that title, years before it. And so it was just where I had a lot of passion on building something different and centering the way that we were designing our processes directly on what would drive differentiation and more customer satisfaction. And we really did drive massive share with Fios as a result of a far superior product and far superior customer experience. It was fun to take on the cable that hadn't had a lot of competition and really, really unearth like opportunity in the business. And I think we made cable, out except for Spectrum today, better competitors as well. And that role taught me a lot about leading a larger team, that director of customer experience. And it served really as a launch pad for the next several years at Verizon. I took on different positions with quite different remits, all with the clear ability, though, to make an impact with just a fresh perspective and some pretty hard work. And some of the positions, frankly, were not all that sexy. So in other words, I didn't waste the opportunities that presented themselves to learn and to ensure that I was seen as like a real value adding player to the team. And I think that's important advice too, is not every role has to be on the shiny new object. So as a result, I've had the chance to hold positions, leadership positions across our home and wireless businesses, ranging from product development to call center and retail operations, and value prop and pricing design, which is where I've spent the last number of years, to customer experience strategy. And, I've led in all parts of the business at all life stages, startup, maturity, renewal, even decline. And, but my track record in driving scale and growth is probably my real signature. And being part of that initial Fios team, that fiber internet and TV business, was the first time I got to work up like in a startup within a legacy business. We were operating as a legacy voice carrier, long distance, all those kind of things. And it in DSL at the time. And it really laid the groundwork for what I'm now doing here at Visible. And I think that Verizon took a chance on me because despite my experience, I was always well prepared, centered on the customer. And I use data and disruption as the two signature drivers of my recommendations. And challenging the way things were traditionally done in the telecom and cable industry is not for nothing, is actually pretty fun. It's like a fun thing, anytime you can take on like the big guy, and say, let's do things differently. And so after a number of other roles, I took on what was likely my most impactful position prior to this one, which was leading our consumer segment marketing across postpaid, prepaid, and home. So I covered all of it. And I developed and executed some of Verizon's most disruptive moves, like the introduction of mix and match. If you see any Verizon ad about our unlimited plans, all that was me and my old team that created all that. On the mobile side, that meant expanding our portfolio of unlimited plans, allowing everyone in a family to choose a plan that matched their unique needs. And it's ultimately been a major driver of revenue and ARPA growth for the firm. And we were really taking that on first. At the time, every carrier, including Verizon, on family plans, had a couple options, but you had to choose. Everybody in the family had to be on the higher tier plan or the lower tier plan. It was an all or nothing game. And we launched that. And, over the last couple of years, both AT&T and T-Mobile have followed suit in allowing the mix and match, but we were the first and really kind of owned that. And in Fios, it meant getting rid of the bundle, the traditional cable bundle. And we dropped all those fees that had emerged in the industry. And it was really frustrating. It was regional sports network fees and broadcast fees and all these things. And we just said, the price is the price. We're going to include that in there. We're not going to hide things. And so when the TV price needs to go up, it's going to go up for new customers and existing. It's not going to be this short, like 2 years later and your price balloons. And so we really provided more choice in that TV space. We started offering YouTube TV in addition to traditional, and we delivered the largest and most profitable subscriber growth we've had in years. And I think sometimes it's listening to the consumers of what they hate. They don't like the stuff that's hidden, and managing cost through pricing is not a good thing. So, throughout it all, I've learned a lot, and I've managed thousands of people at different life stages in the business. And I've learned about cost management, retail operations, customer relationship management, strategic planning, and so much more. And I've also learned the human side of the business. And I got a crash course in that during another stint in my career when I managed the copper side of our business. And that was the role that at first I was like, I don't know that I want to take that. That's a declining business. I learned probably more in that job than I have in any other job, because we were having to reduce force almost every quarter. Like it was a harvest business at that point. And and taking on something that's less like, it's not growth, it's not the sizzle factor, it's not when it's going to drive the business, but you had to manage it in a different way, and learning how to rally the troops to get behind how we had to manage it better and to optimize the harvest was a very important part of my career development. So I've taken lessons from all those spaces with me. And having said all that, you can probably tell I don't consider myself a quote unquote tech person, right? I don't have a STEM background like many of my peers, but rather I have a customer focused background in designing solutions that really meet the needs and leverage the technology that we do better than anybody else with our networks at Verizon. And I'm really data centric. I know how to manage, grow, and scale startups, as I talked about, but I have some failures in my career too, and I don't think that's bad to say. We started some things. I was part of. Some of you probably no, none of you have heard of it. I guarantee none of you have heard of it. It failed that badly. Called Go 90. And it was a digital platform. The Go 90 was like, oh, turn your phone sideways and watch video. And it was free. It was short form content. It was basically a precursor to what Quibi became, which also was a spectacular failure. And I bet that it would be a spectacular failure based on my experience with Go 90. But we invested a lot. And in content, we actually won an Oscar, for a short form film that we did with Kobe Bryant on basketball, Dear Basketball. And I think that like we did some really cool stuff, but ultimately the business model and the market, it wasn't there. And I think it's important to say, look, some of the research said it could be, but whether it was execution or timing, Quibi proved that it wasn't about how much you spent on it because they spent far more than we did. Sometimes it's just, things take off and things don't. And I think that's okay to understand too. So all in all, like what I think sets me apart is that I know how to tell technology stories in a way that tend to resonate with customers. It's these customer inputs that have allowed me to roll out initiatives that are more guaranteed to be successful. Not always, like Go 90, but generally what we do with mix and match, I think that's a big part of my legacy here at Verizon. And now I'm at Visible, and it's a sort of a culmination of all those experiences so far. And there's this opportunity to hone in on Visible's niche and find the consumers for whom it will resonate and disrupt from within. And, I've always really wanted to build a brand that drives the bottom line business growth, but truly innovates the industry. And I know that we can be that brand. And, part of the fun thing for me, I was talking with some people last night at a dinner about it, is I'm breaking my own things that I created. I'm challenging, I know better than anybody why we make the decisions in the world of wireless for pricing and plans. So it's fun to challenge those because we don't have, like Verizon has 80 million customers you have to consider that pay you every month, so the consideration of that is big for T-Mobile and AT&T and Verizon and every other carrier that has a large base. So when you're coming in from the start, you can really challenge those things without having to worry about, I always say when you're driving a big ship, you can't make too fast of turns. You might crack the hull. And that's important. And being over here, we can do things differently because we don't have the legacy base or sediment there. So, one of the things I know that it was asked to talk about, like just being a woman in male dominated field. So I think it's a specific experience being a woman in any male dominated field, let alone tech. But for me, it's been multiplied because, as I mentioned, I don't consider myself a tech person, at least not in the way that some of my colleagues are on engineering. So, but I've been lucky. While I'm acutely aware that there are a few female CEOs in telecom, I've always felt support and encouragement from my colleagues. And I think Verizon as a corporation does very well in supporting women leadership. So over the years, I've learned that there's inherent gender bias in life, but in the workplace too. And I've talked a little bit about how that can translate into the housework of work that I find women just naturally do. And by the way, that men naturally let them do. And I kind of call BS on it a little bit sometimes. And what I mean by housework of work is like the woman in the room is the one to get let me pick that up, or like grab the water or snacks, or even as stupid as like saying, hey, for our boss, let's go together to get a holiday gift. And the expectation is always like, if there's 3 men and 3 women on the team, there's 100% expectation that one of the women or the women will coordinate it. And that's like the stuff that I call the housework of work. And it happens in all levels by the way. So, and we naturally kind of take it on because I think, we're doers by trade. And I think sometimes it's important to make sure that stuff is even divided equally and you call it out. And I think men have as much of a role in that as well as women. That just is something that we've got to make sure that bogs down the focus of the time from other things sometimes for women. So, I can also share, a few ways I've gotten ahead of my own career that might be helpful for this group, because, as you all are women and working in tech too, and it really is about having data to back up your idea. I've always been, I'm a passionate person by nature, and I will, argue a point, and I have instincts that are usually pretty solid, but I rarely go forward in pushing forward an idea. My instincts lead me to try to get the data to either prove or disprove the hunch. But I think that's a critical part. So always have the data on your side, but you also need a stakeholder. And that's part of getting that critical alignment and trust of your colleagues. And I learned it the hard way, by the way, on not stakeholdering. I'll tell you a little story. So when I was trying to get Mix and Match off the ground, I'd been with Verizon 15 years. I had a really strong track record leading in a bunch of different roles in our wireline division, and my reputation had been there. Like it was, as a result, I was actually asked to come to wireless at the time and lead the value prop team. And I jumped at the chance because it was a big challenge and I could find new pockets of growth for a business that was becoming more saturated, and where unlimited now, like we had gone to unlimited, the industry had come to unlimited, and this was in 2017. And Wall Street was questioning where the future revenue growth would come from, because once everybody's on unlimited, what else are you going to sell them? And my new team and I took that task on and looked ourselves in conference rooms. We locked ourselves in conference rooms for months. We were ideating. We did a lot of in-depth research studies and concept tests and financial modeling. And we had a great recommendation and plan. And I flew to a meeting of all of our regional SVPs and VPs, our COO, a number of others. And I presented this big plan to change all of our pricing completely, and I was like, holy hell, like, what did I do? I did not predict at all what would happen. I got to ask a ton of questions. I'm prepared. So I had all the answers. So I had thought about that. Yeah, we did this. Yeah, okay. But the response was like, I dropped a bomb, and everyone had concerns. Everyone had a huge skepticism. They were mixed with a dose of, you don't know wireless, we're the experts, and I realized then I didn't have anyone in the room on my side. I was the new person who was biting off more than I could chew. It was too big for my britches, the net of the story is we ended up not launching what I presented that day. But over the next few months, I tried to recover from that prezo gone wrong. And we launched a very scaled down version that was okay, but it took the wind out of the sails of the disruption aspect. And after some leadership changes in Verizon and another round of research to prove in the hypotheses and a lot of personal stakeholdering with the key leaders to get them on board, it was probably over a year and a half later, after that original presentation, we launched in market something very similar to what I had presented originally. And our premium mix jumped from 19% to 42%. And then with the second iteration a year later to over 60%. And that's a huge market value that to customers and to Verizon. And we lost out on a year of it because I didn't recognize the culture I had stepped into, and I didn't stakeholder. And this isn't just in tech, it's anywhere. So understanding how decisions are made, who makes them, is something now that I understand deeply whenever I take on a new role. And even though I'm a CEO, like in this job, ultimately I'm still part of Verizon. So the big decisions still have stakeholder elements of decisions that we have to make. And I think that's a key thing to understand. And a piece of guidance I would have is understand how decisions are made. And it works. It works to have people on your side, because then you have an advocate in the room. And another key element is to speak your mind. I've always been opinionated. I'm not apologetic about that at all. You can probably tell that. And as a leader myself, I like it when my team challenges me. So, I can shut down things pretty quickly with my opinion, but the people that tend to succeed the most with me are be like, wait, I disagree with that. And here's why. And if they have data to back it up, they challenge my unique point of view. The give and get there is what actually ultimately makes us a better company. It makes all of us better employees. I welcome that challenge, because I have instincts. I will make decisions quickly with the data I have. But if there's data that I don't have and you have it, tell me and challenge me. And And I found that with leaders, there's respectful ways and good ways to do that. And you have to understand the leader you work for, but that's an important thing. And another learning I've acquired over the years is to move around a lot. Not necessarily physical relocation, but in your organizations or in different companies even. So different leaders see you in different lights. If you're in a big company, it's important to have more stakeholders that have seen you or more leaders that have worked with you and can be your advocate. Even if it's a lateral move, a new leader, to me, every new leader I've worked with gives me completely different perspective, teaches me different ways to lead. Like, I see their strengths, I pull from that. I see their weaknesses, and they call out my strengths and weaknesses in ways that I maybe didn't see or another leader didn't see. And you need to also learn how to brand yourself. Think of it as telling your story, from what you're doing in a storyline and the strategic side of your role. It'll be evident when you decide to really brand yourself. And so, I moved around in my career. My strengths always, started to emerge even more. And then I've always, been data driven, very passionate, hard work ethic, and tenacious is a word that people use to describe me, which I was like, I don't know, is there gender bias in that? But at the same point, I'm like, I own that. I am tenacious. We get things done. And I took on, several roles that afforded me the opportunity to contribute significantly to the business and really focused in growth and scale. So I don't know if we're getting, how much time do we have here, Marty? I want to make sure I don't take too much more time.
Thanks, Angie. We've got 15 minutes. So,
Okay.
if you're okay transitioning to kind of the Q&A portion to wrap up here.
Yeah. Let me just give you a couple quick things on just, there's one section that I like, or some notes I put here that I thought would be good to share, and about innovation, because it's a good little story about, thinking differently. And I'm totally copying and stealing this, because I was thinking about advice to share with all of you that might help. And I spoke recently at a event about innovation and some insights I received from spending some time at another company. And so Melanie Healey is an amazing leader. She's on the Verizon board of directors. She was former group president at Procter & Gamble. And she set up an exchange for some of us Verizon leaders with the P&G leaders. And I was lucky to go to Cincinnati, and I spent a lot of time with them. And it fundamentally changed my narrower perspective on innovation, which was centered primarily on technology, like product, network, groups, like not the marketing and sales side, which I was spending more of my career in. And it was a far broader perspective. And there's a Harvard Business thing, you can find it online, Harvard Business Review about it, but they talk about the 4 types of innovation. And like, I'll go through quickly the 4, but the first is the one that I always thought of, which is disruptive, like a new category. And frankly, visible is that, in my view. Like, we are, in much of what probably what the panel working on today has been that, like they did Swiffer, Febreze, they did some of those new product categories that was completely different. And that's massive disruption, was when that kind of the disruptive innovation comes in. The second type is sustaining. And this one is the ERS, the faster, the better, the cleaner. So say like at Verizon, when we give more hotspot data, or we increase speeds of our home broadband, those are examples of sustaining innovation. You can always make what you do today a little better. And I think many of you have that type of ongoing innovation. Like, you just keep looking at how do we make it better? What do we do things that faster? All those kind of elements are part of sustaining. The third is transformational. And I like to think of this as line extensions. So like Tide Pods or Olay Regenerist. And for Invisible, that's Party Pay. It was our way of giving our customers the benefits of multi-line pricing without all the complexity. So, what you can be at any party, whether you're friends, colleagues, neighbors, strangers, anybody, and it's $25 a month and everyone pays separately. So it's a huge success for us. And it's a particularly interesting case study because there's actually a ton of people in the same party that don't know each other. We have parties with 20-some thousand people in them, and they found each other online through social media. And it's part of that building community. And so nothing really like this exists elsewhere. And it's like, there's even a subreddit Reddit dedicated to it. So it's exciting. So I view that as a transformational. And the fourth is probably my favorite, because I'm a marketer by trade. And this is commercial or marketing innovation. It's where you don't change the product at all. You simply change how you talk about it and you innovate on that. And that's, I always look at the Old Spice campaign from years. Like, the Old Spice had been around forever. It was like last in the category. And they came out with the Smells Like a Man campaign. And it like shot them up to like number 1 and number 2 across the US. And it was just marketing innovation. And talking about it differently. And I think that's why you don't have to be an engineer to disrupt or lead in tech and in innovation. You have the ability to do that from nearly any position. I think that framing can help all of us think even more outside of the box. So why don't we go to Q&A, and then sorry, I took a little more time, but I thought that was like a fun little way to steal someone else's work, which is P&G's, but I think it frames innovation. And I think it's a really good thing for all of us to think about how we innovate.
Yeah, and definitely relevant to all the topics today, and really appreciate you sharing that. And again, just as our previous leaders this morning, well, there's a lot here, a lot of great takeaways that you shared with us, Angie. We do have some time still for some Q&A. So again, folks, feel free to post some questions in the chat, in the Q&A section, or raise your hand if you'd like to ask Angie something directly. To kick it off, Angie, there's so many commonalities and common themes between what you shared today and what our other presenters shared. And one of those was the focus on customers. I think Ivy spoke to this really strongly, and you have a background in marketing, but I suspect that is more part of you than maybe your training. Can you talk a little bit about where that came from for you? Why the focus on customers and the data-driven decision making that maybe has led to for you?
I mean, well, I think it's when you start to think about how are you going to win in any sort of industry, like the reality is you have to think about the customers. And when you start to think on the edges of what are the pain points or the unknown pain points that customers may not even realize they have, it's like no business is going to be successful without focusing on the customer. So when you start to lead only with financials, ultimately it's probably not customer first, and there are ways to do both. But if you center the focus on the consumer, sometimes the other things fall. Like, you got to make the right decision. There's a lot of bad decisions made because we're only focused on one of the stakeholders, right? Which is, your shareholders, and you're not focused on employees or your customers or what's emerging now is a really important part, which is society as a whole, like your social impact. So, I think that the equivalent view of all those, but I always say like put the customer first, and you're gonna make the right decisions for the business ultimately. So I think it's just instinctual for me, and it's also the most fun, creative place for me is to think about challenging and creating things that customers will love, because our vision is to be the most loved brand of the digital generations, and how much fun is it to create something that people will love, and if you think about that, you create differently. We don't create because let's create the thing that people want to pay the most for. Like that's what, like that doesn't sound very fun. And so I think it's just that mentality of knowing why we're here for our customers.
Mm-hmm. Question came through the chat. Is Visible hiring?
Visible is hiring. In fact, I just posted on LinkedIn the day before. So there's a number of positions open across the team. We're growing and expanding. So I expect not only are we hiring right now, but we'll continue to be hiring and adding to the team probably throughout 2022 as we continue to grow. We are hiring right now. So I know this is mostly in Cleveland, in 4 locations across the US, which is Denver, Atlanta, Dallas, and New York and New Jersey, where are kind of our hiring hubs and main office locations. We are moving to a more hybrid environment starting next year. So I see that Michelle said that they are hiring too. So
yes. Thanks, Angie. We still have a few minutes here. I'm hoping you could maybe circle back. I think there's again so much here that you shared today that I think are going to be just great takeaways for everyone. Something that really jumped out to me, the phrase, the housework of work.
Yeah.
And I imagine maybe there's a story you have there. And I'm going to frame the question this way. When's the last time someone asked you to do the housework of work? Because I imagine the last time was probably the last time.
What's so funny is it's not even necessarily that it's asked. It's that it's almost implied. And even me, who is maybe not your traditional, I'm probably less prone to being that person as a general rule. Like at home, I will do that, but there are people that just instinctually, like, you can tell their household is run by them, even if they're a female leader, like, everything is done there. And I'm like an outsourcer for a lot of stuff. Like I knew that early, that I'm like, I want to have a successful career and I'm going to outsource the stuff I don't like to do. Like, I'm not going to still clean my house. Like, I don't want to do that. Like once I got to a point where I could afford it, there's a balancing act. When you're younger in your career, you still have to do all that. But I would say it's more just instinctual that even now I find myself, it's more my balance of not volunteering to do it automatically. And almost asking the men to do the roles that are traditionally picked up by the women. Like it can be things like the coordinating of a meeting, or the taking like, oh, I'll take notes, or I'll send out the deck, or all that, like what I would generally call more administrative work. But it's also like I said, I always, like last year, I will say we got a debate in my like leadership team. I'm like, no, I've done the holiday gifts every year. Like, one of you guys do it. And it became like a debate with the guys in the team. And it became almost a joke. I'm like, no, this is like a gender bias thing. You guys are responsible. And it became almost like, so we decided to do like girls got their own gift and the guys got their own gift for our boss. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it is just step up to it. Step up and do it. Like, it's not a big deal, but those kind of things, there's inherent bias in it, and everyone should be aware of it. You should call it out. And you don't have to call it out in a negative way. You call it out in a positive and funny way, because it breaks the tension, but it also makes it seen, because sometimes it's just unseen, you know?
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. There's another question in the chat along those lines too, in terms of how do you change it? And I think you offered some great advice there. So we'll call it out. That maybe not in a negative way, but like you said, in a way maybe it breaks the tension, but don't be afraid to voice, and say, hey, look, wait, maybe you should do this, right? That's yeah. Question just came through the chat here at the article about innovations, the process, the steps. That was Harvard Business Review, correct?
Yeah. So if you look up, you could probably just find it online. I'm assuming this is because it's from a lot of it's from my memory. So I'm not going to have you guys hold me accountable to the actual words and how they describe it. It was like how I described it before, but I think I get them right. I've talked about it a long time, but it's just look up the 4 types of innovation from Procter and Gamble. You will probably find the HBR article. I think that was written on it, but they've kind of lived under that for a long time. And I just, they are massively innovative. They have done, very like I'd say scientific technology, with even design of how your paper towels absorb, like those kind of things. It was just a fascinating experience from a very different world, but it made me think about innovation differently and much broader. That broadened the aperture for me on how I think about it and how my impact, even as a marketer, in innovation is there. And I think that's critical for everybody to think about.
Great. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Just looking at the chat here. So maybe just one more, just kind of overall question. Any parting advice? Just one more. I mean, again, you gave so much here, but if there's and I love how you just kind of, I think a lot of people today, I know myself, have learned so much. Again, a lot of things to think about and consider and opening up, and a lot of themes with disruption and taking risks and moving sideways and moving around. And it doesn't have to be linear or vertical, and trying different things and raising your hand. And if there's one more takeaway you'd like everyone to walk away with here this morning?
Well, I didn't end on this, but it's my typical leadership philosophy. I talk about this a lot with my team, but in a lot of places I've spoken, but I talk about my 3 I's for me are my grounding for my leadership, which is to be inquisitive, to be intentional, and to be inspirational. And the being inquisitive part is being interested, being a student all the time, both my industry and adjacent industries and of your customers. And you look for the white spaces to create unique and differentiated solutions, and look for things that other people are doing better, and take your interest to ideas for your own role. And then on the intentional part, it's be really intentional. And when I say intentional, it's like across multiple facets of your work and your life. Be intentional with your time, with your words, with the asks of your team, if you have a team that reports to you, because if you're not, it's going to hold you back from your impact. And then being inspirational, the more you rise in your career, the more important this actually is. And it's important but it's important at all levels. And it's important to be inspired for yourself, that if you aren't leading a team, as it is to inspire others. So, when you've worked for people that haven't been like if you've worked for people that truly believe in the art of what is possible for the future, and you feel that, like, the work that you put forth is different. So I challenge myself to ensure that I am actually putting that passionate self forward for my team. And I check myself on the bad days, because not every day I'm probably at 100% on that, but I want to make sure that I show up with that energy and positivity to really inspire. And it's also important to remember that, the work can be, you don't want it to be just work. You want it to have a broader impact on society. And when you have a mission beyond the almighty dollar, like, the more invested you are in your team in it. So that's all part of my be inspirational. It's my 3 I's. That's my parting advice.
And that is great parting advice. And you certainly showed up energetic and enthusiastic and passionate today. And you, along with our other panelists this morning, have made quite an impact. So Kim, on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much. And thank you once again to Angie, to Kim, to Michelle, to Ivy, to all of you for your participation this morning. Just a few closing items here to share with you all before we part. First of all, there have been some questions. We are going to share this session again, and it was recorded, so it will be available after this morning. So more to come on that. And then also just a few other resources. So you have a few URLs up here on the screen. Tech Elevator, certainly. Greater Cleveland Partnership, the Tech Week is still this week. It's still ongoing. There's a lot of great events and sessions, virtual and in person, happening the remainder of the week. So please check that out. Thank you again to today's sponsor, the Cleveland Water Alliance. And one other message here on behalf of Tech Elevator. I mentioned at the outset the work that we're doing to try to engage more underrepresented groups in tech. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through a scholarship program we call Represent Tech. So if anyone you know is interested in getting into the field of software development, we'd encourage you to take a look at this program, certainly a Tech Elevator, but this scholarship is providing upwards of 85% of the cost of tuition. We've made a $1 million investment over the next couple of years to offer these scholarships across all of our campuses. And it's a first step for us, but hopefully a significant, impactful first step to start seeing more women and others in technology roles. Thank you again to all of you for your time this morning. What an inspiring day. Great way to kick off a Tuesday. And we hope that you have the opportunity to attend more sessions this week. Thank you again to our panelists, and we hope that all of you had a great morning and have a great remainder of your day. Thanks so much.